Thank you, Secretary Blinken, for your candor and your time and your knowledge of the issues. In your written statements, you talked about the growing conflicts, budget challenges, and great power competition. We have spent the last 3.5 hours, roughly 2.5 hours talking, 3.5 hours talking about the East and the West. And curiously missing is the North and the South dynamics. The world has changed greatly. Africans are 1/8 of the human race, and we spent less than 1% of our questions talking about our relationship going forward. Could you please share with us your thoughts that we may be missing on the importance of Africa in the New World?
Yeah, I very much appreciate that. In fact, I'm just back, as you may know, from Ethiopia and Niger, my third trip to sub-Saharan Africa. As Secretary, other colleagues, including the Vice President, who's almost quite literally on her way. And as you know, to reflect the importance of Africa, where in 20 years, I think we're going to have 1 in 4 people on this planet will be African. We put out a strategy for sub-Saharan Africa last year, and of course we had the Africa Leaders Summit, where the President convened and brought together the leaders of more than 40 countries. We've made significant commitments and joint plans coming out of that summit. We've named a very senior diplomat who was retired but is very well known, Johnny Carson, to oversee the implementation of the agreements and commitments that were made at the summit. And we are, in many ways, across many issue areas, really digging into building up and building out these partnerships. And that goes to a whole host of issues, some of them particularly urgent when it comes, for example, to food insecurity, where we're not only working to address immediate needs. The real focus that we're trying to bring to this, and this is what I've heard from African colleagues throughout, is the strong desire for investments in their own sustainable production capacity. And so we're engaging not only the government but the private sector in that. I think the potential is enormous in many parts of Africa, not only to be able to feed itself, but actually to feed other countries with sustainable production. We're digging into trade and investment. Obviously, we have some existing vehicles like AGOA that's set to expire in 2025. I think it's had a dramatic positive impact on the ability of African countries to trade, including with the United States. And we'll look to work with Congress on that. At the same time, there's a free trade area of Africa that is now standing up. That's a hugely important thing because we've had this abnormal situation where, in the absence of these connections among African countries were doing more trade with countries outside of Africa than they were doing with each other. That will help right the balance and also create greater opportunities for investment from the United States because you'll have markets that are tied together. We're working on that with infrastructure, the infrastructure investments that we're making, including with the Global Partnership on Infrastructure Investment, many of whose projects will be focused in Africa, are going to do that and to connect countries together. We have the Millennium Challenge Corporation that's invested in, I think, very significant ways to help, again, African trade and investment move forward. As I said, in Ethiopia, we've had work there, but in Niger, one of the poorest countries in Africa, actually, the MCC compacts are making a huge difference. For example, paving more than 300 kilometers of roads, working to connect Benin and Niger so that there's more of a common ability to trade and more of a common market between them. There's a lot to be said about this. I really welcome following up, particularly the work of the Africa Leaders Summit.
Yep, and 2 other parts to that is one is the 43 out of the 54 African leaders were in Russia this past week. And so when you talk about new alliances and competition for the new market, that they are actively seeking that relationship. But the last question I'd like to put on to you is that for the, well, it's probably just a statement that I think we lose credibility in the eyes of the world community when we let Haiti be so close and yet we're so far and distant from them, that to have the most powerful nation with the poorest nation right at our border, right at our footstool, that we are an ally of Haiti. They've been a creditor to us. They helped us in past wars in Savannah. I would like to know that we can unilaterally move in like we've done in other countries without a host of cooperation, but help Haiti gain their independence and truly cement their democracy.
Thank you.